Plague Bearers. They are the main foot soldiers of Nurgle, made from the souls of mortals who died from his worst plagues. They're tall, rotting, and covered in sores, with one horn on their head and a single cloudy eye. In battle, Plague Bearers fight in slow-moving groups, swinging rusted plague swords covered in filth. Even a small cut from these blades can rot flesh down to the bone. On top of that, they're hard to kill, and the cloud of flies buzzing around them makes it even harder to land a clean shot from a distance. Wherever they walk, the ground itself rots, and everything nearby starts to stink of death and disease. Plague Bearers have a strange secondary job. They're tasked with keeping track of every new disease and every death caused by Nurgle's gifts. The problem is, they're constantly getting distracted by the fighting, so the count is never right. Still, they never stop trying, and their voices are a terrifying sign of their relentless advance. Nurglings. These are the tiny, mischievous demons who look like miniature versions of Nurgle himself, with bloated bellies, diseased skin, and wide, toothy grins. Nurglings swarm across the battlefield in massive piles. They're not strong individually, but in numbers they can overwhelm enemies or clog up machinery with their bodies. Some Nurglings also infest Nurgle's mortal champions, living inside them like parasites. In battle, they leap out to protect their host, treating them like a walking home. They also act as living palanquins, forming squirming thrones to carry Nurgle's favored champions across the battlefield. Their distant cousins, known as glitchlings, have a more technological twist. They're drawn to machines, infesting enemy vehicles, and messing with their systems. Out of all Nurgle's demons, Nurglings are the best example of his playful, almost jolly side, spreading death and disease, but always with a big smile. Beasts of Nurgle. They are big, slug-like demons covered in slime, tentacles, and open sores. They might be war beasts by nature, but the truth is that they're another example of Nurgle's more jolly side. To them, a battlefield isn't a place for war, it's a giant playground full of potential friends. They'll slither up to enemies, trying to wrap their tentacles around them, completely unaware that their slime melts flesh and spreads lethal plagues. When their new friend dies, the beast gets confused for a moment, then wanders off to find someone else to play with, leaving a carpet of disease and rot behind it. In bigger battles, whole packs of beasts squirm and flop across the field, acting like giant, overexcited pets, infecting everything they touch. Rot flies. These are giant bloated flies, each one the size of a small vehicle. These monsters are born directly from Nurgle's garden, when a beast of Nurgle finally gets tired of being ignored by its playmates and dies of sadness. Rot flies have none of the playfulness they once had. They're hateful creatures meant for hunting and spreading rot. Their wings beat with a droning buzz that spreads disease wherever they fly, and their barbed proboscis can impale enemies before pumping them full of plague. Although they're often used as mounts for plague bearers, rot flies are still demons in their own right, capable of acting alone or in swarms. A rarer version known as the battlefly exists, which is even bigger and often fights without a rider. Plague toads. Another terrifying beast from Nurgle's army. Plague toads waddle straight into battle, drawn to the smell of blood and rot. They aren't fast, but their thick flesh makes them surprisingly hard to kill. When they reach the enemy, they lunge forward to swallow victims whole, drowning them in filth and acid. They also work like living battering rams, smashing into enemy lines and knocking over anything that gets in their way. Sometimes, plague bearers even ride them into battle, using them as war mounts, though most of the time they simply lurk in Nurgle's swamps, blending into the landscape until a fight draws them out. Wherever they go, the ground turns to sludge and the air fills with the stink of rot. Vile Savant. They are one of Nurgle's more obscure demons, usually working behind the scenes instead of charging into battle. They are warp entities that look like bloated containment suits. Inside of them, there's no body left, just liquid flesh, vermin, and disease, held together by demonic will. When deployed, vile savants taint air and supplies with every step. They almost always work in small groups called plague cells, spreading Nurgle's gifts quietly until the whole world is rotten from the inside out. Vile savants are different from cultists and corrupted mortals. They are so devoted to Nurgle that they gave up their own flesh to become a living disease. Molluscoids. Slug-like demons with rubbery skin and gaping mouths full of sharp teeth. Compared to Nurgle's other creations, they are far less common, usually found crawling through the darkest, most infected corners of plague-ridden worlds. Molluscoids are born directly from the land itself, spawned when rot and mutation completely overwhelm the environment. They aren't regular parts of Nurgle's armies, though they've been used as mounts on rare occasions. Most of the time, they're just part of the local plague fauna, blending into the landscape, waiting for unlucky prey to wander too close. Heralds of Nurgle. They are the leaders of Nurgle's plague bearers, acting as field commanders in his armies. Each herald is tougher and more gifted with Nurgle's power than the demons they lead. There are several types, each with its own role. The Poxbringer is a battle psyker, using Nurgle's magic to spread disease and strengthen nearby demons. The Spoilpox Scrivener is a taskmaster, constantly yelling at plague bearers to keep proper count of infections, all while using his massive quill as a weapon. The Sloppity Bilepiper fights with music, playing a horrid tune that drives the nearby demons into a frenzy. One herald, Horticulus Slimux, has even been given the role of Nurgle's chief gardener. He rides his giant snail, Mulch, across the battlefield, corrupting entire war zones into living plague gardens. Whatever their specialty, all heralds contribute to empowering the surrounding demons, making them essential to Nurgle's war machine. Epidemius. He is the most important herald of Nurgle, known as the Plague God's chosen tallyman. All plague bearers are tasked with counting diseases and deaths, but Epidemius doesn't just track a single battle, he records the spread of Nurgle's plagues across the entire galaxy. He rides into battle on a palanquin carried by Nurglings, surrounded by scrolls, ledgers, and buzzing flies. His Nurglings serve as both bodyguards and assistants, even bleeding themselves to provide fresh ink when needed. As the battle unfolds, Epidemius counts every infection, mutation, and death in Nurgle's name, updating his records constantly. The more death and disease he records, the stronger he and nearby demons become, as if Nurgle's approval flows directly into his servants. Great Unclean Ones. The greater demons of Nurgle, massive creatures that mirror the god himself. Their bloated bodies leak filth, their guts hang open, and they are constantly surrounded by clouds of flies and swarms of Nurglings. In battle, they cause massive damage to enemy armies using gigantic rusted swords, flails, or maces, all coated in disease. They also vomit streams of filth and unleash plague magic that spreads sickness to anything nearby. Their bodies are extremely resilient, regenerating wounds almost as fast as they're inflicted. They are the generals of Nurgle's armies and have a unique style of commanding. Instead of barking orders, they cheer on their demons like proud uncles, encouraging them to spread Nurgle's gifts with laughter and praise. There are many notable Great Unclean Ones, each with their own feats and personality. In the next entries, we'll cover the two most important ones. Kugath Plaguefather. He is the most famous Great Unclean One, known for his obsession with recreating Nurgle's greatest plague. Long ago, Kugath was just a Nurgling, born in Nurgle's cauldron as the plague god brewed his perfect disease. Kugath fell into the cauldron, swallowed the entire plague, and grew into a Great Unclean One. Nurgle laughed it off and welcomed this turn of events, but Kugath is still determined to recreate the perfect plague he once took from his master. He rides into battle on a palanquin carried by Nurglings, turning every battlefield into a testing ground for his latest creations. Rotigus. Also called the Rainmaker or Rainfather, he is one of the most feared Great Unclean Ones, known for his power over corrupted nature. Wherever he appears, floods of filth, toxic rain, and rotting plant life spread across the land. His mastery of plague magic is unmatched, and he is an extreme threat, capable of slaying entire armies with his staff. Rotigus earned Nurgle's favor by saving the plague god's garden from a devastating fire and has conquered thousands of worlds in his name. One of his most notorious conquests was the Hive world of Nebus, where he easily shattered the Imperial defenses that had held off the Death Guard for years. Filth Lords. They are mortal champions who earned Nurgle's highest reward, ascension into immortal demonhood, becoming walking symbols of decay. Among all demon princes, Nurgle's champions are the slowest and most repulsive, but they are also by far the most resilient. To achieve ascension, Nurgle's followers must please their god and further his goals, which always means spreading death and disease. The perfect example is Mephidast, a former plague cultist who rose to demonhood by infecting an entire Agriworld's food supply, killing billions without a single battle. His body is now a towering mass of filth, with bubonic growths and plague clouds spilling from his skin wherever he walks. Whether they lead armies or spread infection alone, all Filth Lords exist for the same reason: to carry Nurgle's blessings into the heart of every world they touch. Mortarion. He is the demon primarch of the Death Guard, and by far the most powerful of Nurgle's demon princes. Mortarion was once a loyal Primarch of the Emperor, but during the Horus Heresy, he and his legion fell to Nurgle, embracing the Plague God's gifts to survive a horrific warp plague. Now Mortarion's body is fused with his armor, and he has grown giant moth wings. As a demon prince, he towers over most mortals, surrounded by thick clouds of toxic fog that corrode anything nearby. In battle, Mortarion fights with Silence, his massive two-handed scythe, and the Lantern, a pistol that fires beams of searing warp energy. Combined with his psychic powers and Nurgle's endless blessings, he is nearly impossible to kill. His wounds seal themselves with rot, and even his death would likely only send him back to the warp until Nurgle sees fit to unleash him again. The Prisoner of the Emerald Cave. This is a truly obscure Nurgle demon, only ever mentioned in the novel Pandorax, which wasn't exactly well received. Still, I had to include it because it's absurdly powerful and a perfect example of how Warhammer lore sometimes goes completely over the top. The Prisoner is a colossal, great unclean one sealed under the Deathworld Pythos after a battle that wiped out almost every Grey Knight and Imperial soldier sent to stop it. Even Exterminatus wouldn't guarantee its death. It's a living plague factory, constantly spawning demons from its flesh and warping its body to counter any threat. It can even devour war machines, corrupt them, and spit them back out as demon-infested horrors. To keep it sealed, the survivors had to scatter 7 hidden seals across the planet and leave behind a Grey Knight force to stand eternal watch. Horrors. Demons of pure magic which form the core of Tzeentch's armies. Their bodies are constantly twisting into new shapes and colors. They bite, scratch, and hurl warp fire at their enemies, a sorcerous flame that burns flesh and warps reality. Their chaotic nature makes them unpredictable, and they exist in several forms. Pink horrors are the largest and most cheerful, laughing wildly as they unleash their magic. When killed, they split into 2 blue horrors, which are smaller and angrier versions of their pink counterpart. They are more aggressive and will resort more often to melee combat. If those are slain, they finally break down into 2 vengeful brimstone horrors, tiny creatures of warp flame that charge their enemies and explode in a final burst of destruction. Some pink horrors can even be empowered to become iridescent horrors, which act as leaders, guiding their kin with greater intelligence and stronger magic. Due to their shifting forms and endless multiplication, horrors are the perfect embodiment of Tzeentch's most chaotic aspects. Flamers. They are living conduits of sorcerous fire. They have no fixed form. Tendrils, claws, and mouths emerge and vanish as they move, leaving behind trails of flickering, unnatural flames. Unlike normal fire, warp flame doesn't just consume, it changes. A single touch can melt armor, transform victims into mindless creatures, or dissolve them into nothingness. Flamers unleash these flames by spewing them from gaping maws that appear on their hands and limbs, with their entire bodies contorting as they attack. Flamers act as shock troops, moving across the battlefield in unpredictable leaps, spreading magical infernos wherever they land. More powerful versions exist, known as Exalted Flamers. These demons burn even hotter, and they are capable of melting through tanks and fortifications with ease. They are sometimes mounted atop burning chariots, amplifying their destructive power even further. Screamers. Swift, manta-like demons that glide through the air, slashing at enemies with their razor-sharp fins. They are pure predatory instinct, moving with unnatural speed as they hunt and strike without warning. Screamers are built for hit-and-run attacks, diving into enemy lines and cutting through armor and flesh in a single pass. Their serrated fins can even slice through reality itself, leaving behind shimmering wounds in the air. Their lamprey-like mouths are capable of biting through vehicles and consuming the very essence of their victims. Unlike other demon beasts, Screamers cannot be used as mounts due to their wild and untamable nature. However, Tzeentch can reshape them into special demonic discs, binding them to a rider through sorcery, something we'll cover in the next entry. Discs of Tzeentch. These are Screamers that have been reshaped by Tzeentch's sorcery, bound into service as flying mounts for favored sorcerers and demons. Unlike their wild counterparts, discs are fully controlled by their rider, gliding through the air with unnatural speed while striking surrounding enemies with enchanted blades, fanged maws, or writhing tendrils. Discs are typically awarded to heralds of Tzeentch or Chaos champions, allowing them to soar across the battlefield and strike from above. Some are adorned with watching eyes, plated in warp-forged gold and silver, or enhanced with psychic senses that attune them to their rider's will. In rare cases, Tzeentch creates flying chariots, formed by a disc pulled by 2 Screamers. These demonic war machines carry the most powerful sorcerers into battle at the head of vast demon legions. Heralds of Tzeentch. The most powerful and cunning among horrors, heralds are chosen by the Changer of Ways to serve as commanders and sorcerers in his legions. They act as focal points for Tzeentch's magic, amplifying the power of nearby demons and warping the battlefield with their presence. Some ride into battle on discs of Tzeentch, soaring above the chaos while directing their forces with calculated precision. There are many variations of heralds, each with unique abilities. Fate skimmers lead from the skies on burning chariots, commanding with both sorcery and warp fire. Fluxmasters are powerful spellcasters, acting as conduits for Tzeentch's devastating magic. Changecasters serve as footbound leaders, directing demonic war bands with their knowledge of fate and sorcery. Each herald is a formidable magic threat, a leader, and a direct extension of Tzeentch's will on the battlefield. The Blue Scribes, a pair of bizarre twin heralds, Ptarax and Zyrat, created by Tzeentch for a singular purpose, to recover every lost fragment of his former power. According to legend, there was a time when Tzeentch ruled supreme over the warp until the other Chaos Gods united against him, shattering his form into 10,000 pieces. Each shard contained a fragment of his essence scattered across time and space. The Blue Scribes travel the galaxy on top of their Disk of Tzeentch to find and record them all in the hopes of restoring their master's lost supremacy. Despite their grand mission, the Blue Scribes are a peculiar and inefficient duo. Ptarax can transcribe spells into chaos runes and glyphs but cannot read his own writings. Zyrat can read his brother's scrawls but cannot understand them, leading to uncontrolled bursts of magic whenever he speaks. To make matters worse, the two are constantly bickering, slowing their progress even further. But this design is no accident. Tzeentch cannot risk entrusting this task to a more powerful demon, as any ambitious servant might claim his power for themselves. The Changeling. A master of deception and trickery, the Changeling is an extremely insidious herald of Tzeentch. Unlike other heralds, it does not command armies or fight openly. Instead, it infiltrates and manipulates, taking on any form it desires. The Changeling's disguises are flawless. It mimics the voices, movements, and even the abilities of those it impersonates. It has fooled Xenos, humans, and even greater demons, and it can set entire factions against one another or subtly twist the course of history for its own amusement. Even if discovered, the Changeling is far from defenseless. It wields powerful sorcery, capable of warping reality and turning an enemy's own attacks against them. The true extent of its schemes is unknown, even to other demons of Tzeentch. Whether acting on direct orders or pursuing its own unknowable agenda, the Changeling ensures that nothing, not even the plans of the Architect of Fate, are truly predictable. Dark Princelings. Demon princes of Tzeentch, known as Dark Princelings, are mortals who have achieved the highest favor of the Changer of Ways, ascending into immortal beings of sorcery and deception. Each Dark Princeling is shaped by the path they took to demonhood. Some remain hidden manipulators working from the shadows, while others lead Tzeentch's scintillating legions as warlords, commanding through sorcery rather than brute strength. Compared to the demon princes of other gods, Tzeentch's chosen are the most cunning and attuned to the warp, wielding vast psychic power to reshape fate, deceive their enemies, and enact their master's ever-changing schemes. A very notorious and enigmatic example is Gargatuloth, the Prince of 1,000 Faces. He exists simultaneously in real space and the warp, manipulating fate across both realms. He is also so attuned to his god's forbidden knowledge that he managed to immerse himself in Tzeentch's flux of revelations and survive the experience. Magnus the Red, the demon primarch of the Thousand Suns. Magnus is one of the most powerful psychers in existence. He fell to Tzeentch after his near death on Prospero, who ascended him to demonhood and rebuilt his broken body. On the battlefield, Magnus is a walking cataclysm. His presence tears reality apart, warping time and space as he advances. His gaze can shatter minds, and the strongest defenses crumble under the weight of his sorcery. With a thought, he hurls blasts of raw psychic energy, capable of erasing tanks, titans, and entire squads in an instant. Despite his immense power, Magnus remains a tragic figure. He did not seek to betray the Emperor, but he was victim of much larger schemes that led him to fall to chaos in a desperate attempt to save himself and his legion. Now he rules from the planet of the sorcerers as a shadow of his former self, leading the Thousand Suns in their eternal pursuit of knowledge and power. Lords of Change. They are the greater demons of Tzeentch, powerful sorcerers and manipulators serving as his generals and prophets. They are tall, bird-like creatures with massive wings, twisting horns, and ever-shifting forms. Compared to other greater demons, they rarely rely on brute force. Instead, they use powerful sorcery and foresight, altering fate to ensure victory before the battle even begins. Their magic can hurl warp fire, tear through reality, and shatter minds, making them some of the most dangerous entities in the galaxy. Lords of Change are highly intelligent, each with its own personality and schemes. Some prefer to act through mortals and deception, while others opt for flashy displays of raw power. One of their few weaknesses is their arrogance, which at times can lead them to believe they can outthink even Tzeentch himself, only to find they are merely another piece in his endless game. Kairos Fateweaver. Once the strongest of all Lords of Change, Kairos was unmatched in power and wisdom. However, Tzeentch demanded more. To uncover the deepest secrets of fate, he casted Kairos into the Well of Eternity, a place even the god himself feared to tread. Kairos survived the ordeal, emerging as a twin-headed demon with unparalleled knowledge of the past and future. But as always, there was a catch. His two heads never speak the same truth, limiting his reliability as Oracle. He also paid a steep price for this power, as his body was considerably weakened and he lost the ability to see present events. Though still an immensely powerful sorcerer, he is no longer the warrior he once was. Despite this, Kairos has shaped countless events throughout history. He was an instrumental tool in Tzeentch's schemes during the Horus Heresy, and he has even battled multiple Primarchs in his long existence. Aetios Araucaris. Among all Lords of Change, Aetios is the most destructive. He is not known for manipulation or deception, but for raw, unparalleled sorcery. His power is so overwhelming that he is often described as a walking exterminatus, capable of annihilating entire armies with reality-breaking warp fire. To keep his power in check, Tzeentch has bound Aetios with numerous arcane restrictions and incantations, limiting his ability to act freely. These bindings have driven him to madness and hatred, leaving him filled with an unrelenting fury that he unleashes on his enemies. Even with these restraints, Aetios remains one of the most feared demons in existence, and wherever he is summoned, he turns entire battlefields into chaotic ruin. Daemonettes. They are the core infantry of Slaanesh's legions, deadly warriors designed for both speed and precision. They are lean, androgynous creatures with elongated limbs and long, razor-sharp claws that can tear through flesh and even power armor. Daemonettes fight with intelligence and purpose. They strike surgically, often choosing to maim rather than kill, savoring the suffering of their victims. Their reflexes are inhumanly fast, allowing them to dodge bullets and blades with unnatural ease. This is a way for them to compensate for their frail constitution and minimal armor. Their charm is as much a weapon as their claws. Mortals who gaze upon them are often overwhelmed by a mix of fear, awe, and unnatural attraction, leaving them momentarily paralyzed and open to the demon's attacks. On the battlefield, Daemonettes form the bulk of Slaanesh's armies, swarming enemy lines with terrifying speed. They often serve as the personal attendants of greater demons and champions, acting as both warriors and courtiers. Steeds of Slaanesh. Fast-moving demonic mounts primarily used by Seeker cavalry and Seeker chariots. Their long, serpentine bodies are covered in tough chitin, and they glide on the battlefield rather than running. Roaming herds of steeds can be found within Slaanesh's realm in the Warp, in vast golden and silver plains. Daemonettes venture into these fields to capture them, forming the elite Seekers of Slaanesh, the fastest cavalry in the Dark Prince's legions. Seekers use their superior speed to outflank enemies, striking before they can react. The steeds' whip-like tongues secrete a mild paralytic venom, weakening opponents before the Daemonettes finish them off. Steeds are also harnessed into Seeker chariots, where they drag massive bladed war machines to battle. These chariots crush and dismember anything in their path, making them a key assault unit in Slaanesh's forces. Though fragile compared to the mounts of other Chaos gods, Steeds of Slaanesh rely on speed, agility, and precision, making them ideal for fast attacks and ambush tactics. Fiends. They are deadly, four-legged demon beasts that blend speed, strength, and disruptive abilities, making them some of the most dangerous creatures in Slaanesh's legions. Unlike the more graceful steeds, fiends are brutal hunters that can rip their enemies to shreds with powerful claws and barbed tails. One of their most feared traits is their discordant screech, a piercing, unnatural sound that disrupts enemy psychers and weakens warp-based abilities, making them valuable against sorcerers and warp-sensitive foes. Fiends also exude a soporific musk, a potent scent that overwhelms the senses of mortals, slowing their movements and dulling pain responses, making them more susceptible to the fiend's attacks. They are rarely seen in large numbers, preferring to hunt in small packs or serve as shock troops. They use their powerful legs to leap great distances and strike with their scythe-like claws coated in paralytic venom. Heralds of Slaanesh. The elite Daemonettes who have ascended beyond their kin, acting as leaders, champions, and emissaries of the Dark Prince. They embody Slaanesh's ideals of excess, pleasure, and cruelty, each specializing in a different aspect of war. Tranceweavers are the standard heralds of the legions of excess. They lead packs of Daemonettes and inspire them to greater heights of sadism, while their own razor-sharp claws carve through enemies with ease. Infernal enrapturouses craft instruments from the bodies of their victims, playing soul-wrenching melodies that empower surrounding demons. They can also act as a living artillery and cast powerful sonic waves with their music. Tormentbringers ride Slaanesh's deadly war chariots to lead and to plow through enemy ranks. They focus on high-speed carnage, turning battlefields into blood-drenched spectacles of excess. Chosen Children. Demon princes of Slaanesh, also known as the Chosen Children, are former mortals who achieve the ultimate reward of ascension to demonhood. Compared to the other gods, Slaanesh offers many paths for ascension. Their rise can come from unmatched artistry, reaching new heights of pleasure, or the classic pursuit of perfection in battle. But a demon prince of Slaanesh must constantly surpass their own achievements, or risk being cast down and turned into a chaos spawn for failing to amuse their master. In battle, the Chosen Children are among the fastest and most agile demon princes, using inhuman speed, grace, and precision to slay their enemies. They fight with whips, claws, and enchanted blades. Their psychic abilities focus on overwhelming the senses, twisting minds with waves of pleasure and agony until resistance becomes impossible. Among them, few embody the pursuit of excess like Doom Rider, a former Chaos Space Marine who sought the ultimate rush. He ascended to demonhood by embracing speed as his obsession and impressing the Dark Prince. Keepers of Secrets. The greater demons of Slaanesh and its most terrifying emissaries, created to serve as the Dark Prince's powerful generals. Their name comes from their ability to peer into the minds of mortals, uncovering their deepest secrets, desires, and weaknesses to exploit them in battle. Their forms are tall, elegant, and alluring, and they wield enchanted whips or swords. Keepers are also the fastest and most agile greater demons, capable of outmaneuvering even the most elite warriors. Their razor-sharp claws can slice through power armor, and their immense strength allows them to tear apart vehicles and creatures with ease. Beyond physical combat, they are masters of psychic manipulation. Their presence on the battlefield can be enough to seal the outcome of a battle by turning allies against each other with their hypnotic voice or overwhelming enemies with agony. There are many infamous keepers, each with their own story and ambitions. Later in this video, we'll cover the 3 who stand above the rest, locked in an endless competition to become Slaanesh's greatest demon. The Mask of Slaanesh. Once Slaanesh's most favored herald, the Mask was a master of ritual dance and would perform for the Dark Prince and its court. Her downfall came when she dared to dance for Slaanesh without invitation, in an attempt to amuse her master after an humiliating defeat in war. Slaanesh saw it as an unforgivable insult and cursed her to dance for all eternity. Despite her exile, the Mask remains one of Slaanesh's most active agents, appearing across war zones and chaos-infested worlds to perform her never-ending dance. She has turned this curse into a weapon, weaving hypnotic steps that warp reality, forcing enemies into a trance or compelling them to move until they collapse. Whether leading demon hordes or manipulating mortal cults, she spreads the will of the Dark Prince, despite knowing she will never be forgiven. Sylesk. Syl Ludetongue was once a respected herald of Slaanesh, known for whispering temptations into the ears of mortal champions. Unlike most demons, Syl took a personal interest in these mortals, seeing potential in them rather than just tools for amusement. This attachment was seen as weakness by Slaanesh's court, who exiled Syl for their own entertainment. Cast out and humiliated, Syl wandered the warp until encountering Esk, a mortal gladiator fighting in Slaanesh's arenas. Syl nurtured his ambition, guiding him until he ascended as a demon prince. After their rise to power, Syl and Esk performed a forbidden ritual before Slaanesh's throne, merging into a single entity, Sylesk. This fusion created a being that embodies both power and grace, blending Syl's cunning sorcery with Esk's raw brutality. N'Kari. One of the most ancient and active keepers of secrets, N'Kari has long pursued ever greater excess, indulging in its dark urges across the galaxy. In older lore, N'Kari was actually described as a demon prince, but its early background has been soft retconned over time, and it is now acknowledged as a keeper of secrets instead. At one point, N'Kari was Fulgrim's companion, standing alongside the Primarch after his ascension. It was even seen conversing with Fulgrim when Lorgar sought him out to join the Siege of Terra. N'Kari has led many invasions, always seeking new sensations and pleasures. However, it has also suffered repeated defeats, especially at the hands of the Imperium. Still, like all of Slaanesh's Chosen, death is only a temporary setback, and N'Kari always returns, each time more depraved and cunning than before. Zarakanel, the ultimate nightmare of the Eldar. Zarakanel is one of the most feared keepers of secrets, known for its unnatural speed and killing prowess. Its presence alone shatters minds, overwhelming mortals with both horror and unwilling admiration. Zarakanel has slain countless warriors with Soul Eater, a special blade that rips through any defense and consumes the soul of its victim. This demon has many great feats, but its most important conquests remain against the Eldar, the race Slaanesh thirsts for the most. Zarakanel has razed craft worlds, corrupted their champions, and broken their strongest warriors. No matter how many times the Eldar banish it, Zarakanel always returns to torment them. Shalaxi Hellbane. Also known as the Monarch of the Hunt, Shalaxi is Slaanesh's ultimate weapon against the mightiest champions of rival Chaos Gods. While most Keepers of Secrets have diverse roles, Shalaxi is singularly focused on dueling, created specifically to hunt and slay greater demons and legendary warriors. Through its supernatural senses, Shalaxi can uncover the deepest fears and weaknesses of its prey, ensuring each confrontation ends in its favor. Wielding the Living Whip and the Soul Piercer Spear, it has defeated countless foes, from bloodthirsters and hive tyrants to legendary Eldar heroes. Even though Shalaxi once fell out of Slaanesh's favor after being banished by the Grey Knights, it has since reclaimed its place as the Dark Prince's favored hunter. Now, restored to glory, it stands ready to challenge any champion who dares to rise against its master. Fulgrim. Once the noble Primarch of the Emperor's Children, he fell to chaos in the early stages of the Horus Heresy, eventually ascending as a demon prince. During the Great Crusade, he acquired a Xenos blade housing a powerful demon of Slaanesh, which whispered into his mind and gradually twisted his ideals. By the time of the Horus Heresy, he had fully embraced the traitor cause. His legion was one of the first to betray the Imperium, and he would eventually slay his brother Ferrus Manus at the Drop Site Massacre. Now a four-armed, serpentine monstrosity, Fulgrim fights with inhuman speed and flawless technique. His four arms can each turn into demonic talons or wield a different deadly weapon from his arsenal. Unlike other demon Primarchs, Fulgrim hasn't been very active since the Horus Heresy ended, retreating into the warp to indulge in his excesses while his legion shattered into various warbands. Bloodletters. The most common demons of Khorne, forming the core of his endless legions. They are tall, red-skinned, and covered in muscle, with horned heads and glowing eyes that mark them as creatures of pure war. They are armed with Hellblades, special weapons infused with Khorne's fury. They cut through armor, flesh, and even devour the souls of their victims. Bloodletters are unexpectedly disciplined, they march in formation and follow their general's orders without fail. They let their instincts take over only once they get close to their prey, striking with terrifying speed and ferocity. Despite being the standard troops of the Blood Legions, they are still far superior to a standard human. Their presence taints the battlefield, the air thickens with the scent of blood, and the ground scorches beneath their feet. Juggernauts. The unstoppable war beasts of the Blood Legions, terrifying creatures of demonic flesh fused with brass armor. Their hides are as tough as tank plating, and their bladed tusks and iron-hard skulls can tear through enemy lines like they were never there. These creatures are fearless and relentless, charging straight into battle without slowing down. In Khorne's realm, they roam across the wastelands in endless stampedes, trampling anything too weak to stand its ground. In war, they are usually ridden by bloodletters, forming the feared Blood Crusher Cavalry, a destructive force that smashes through the thickest defenses. Even mortal champions of Khorne sometimes earn the right to ride a juggernaut, but only if they can prove their worth first and conquer one of these beasts. Fleshhounds. These are Khorne's feral predators, unleashed to hunt down the targets of the Blood God. Once they've marked a prey, they will chase it across the battlefield, or even across reality, until it's torn apart. Built for speed and brutality, they run on muscle-bound limbs and are covered in iron-hard hides that easily resist both blades and sorcery. Their fangs rip through armor with ease, and their collars of Khorne make them highly resistant to psychic attacks. They roam in packs, striking with precision and overpowering enemies in a frenzy of fangs and claws. In bigger battles, they are the perfect flankers, hitting the enemy forces while they are distracted by the bulk of the legion. Heralds of Khorne, the strongest of the Bloodletters, demons who have slaughtered their way to leadership. They serve as battlefield commanders, leading Khorne's legions with a mix of raw power and their commanding presence. Stronger and more skilled than their kin, they wield empowered hellblades that can carve through the toughest armor. Their leadership amplifies the bloodlust of nearby demons, turning already frenzied warriors into unstoppable killing machines. These heralds can assume different names based on how they ride into battle. Bloodmasters march on foot with the other Bloodletters, Skullmasters ride into battle on juggernauts, and Rendmasters lead from a blood throne, a special demon engine of Khorne. No matter their specific form, they exist for one reason: to lead Khorne's armies in an endless war of blood and skulls. Bloodthirsters. These are Khorne's most powerful demons, towering winged monsters built for destruction. They are clad in brass, wield massive weapons, and can act as generals of the Blood God's armies. There are three main types: Wrath of Khorne bloodthirsters focus on striking down key enemy target and are often equipped with an axe of Khorne and a bloodfale whip. Bloodthirsters of insensate rage wield massive two-handed axes, and they are the most destructive of the three. Bloodthirsters of unfettered fury use whips and axes to control the battlefield and lead nearby minor demons. These greater demons easily dominate the battlefield and can only be matched by an equally strong foe. Blood Princes. They are special demon princes dedicated entirely to Khorne, mortal champions who ascended to demonhood by earning Khorne's favor through slaughter and skull offerings. Once they are transformed into a blood prince, these champions acquire immortality and a formidable strength that can rival that of greater demons. Some of the most infamous blood princes include Doombreed and Uraka the Warfiend, both ancient warlords from the old days of Terra, and Goreclaw, a Chaos Space Marine that earned his ascension by defeating more than 100 Astartes in melee combat. While some still retain a sliver of their former selves, all blood princes share the same fate, being bound in service for an eternity of war in Khorne's name. Skulltaker. This special demon is Khorne's personal executioner, a legendary bloodletter who roams the battlefield seeking only the strongest enemy champions. He hunts down the greatest of every race and takes their skulls as offerings for the Skull Throne. He wears a cape of skulls and wields the Slayer Sword, a weapon infused with the blood god's fury. This allows him to be a formidable duelist. His victims' skulls are claimed and kept as trophies, their spirits forever trapped in torment as a reminder of his victories. Skulltaker can either fight on foot or atop his juggernaut steed, appearing where the battle is thickest, cutting down warlords, champions, and heroes with unstoppable precision. Karanak. Also known as the Hound of Vengeance, it is Khorne's favorite hunting beast, a massive three-headed flesh hound unleashed to track down and destroy those who defy the blood god. Unlike ordinary flesh hounds, Karanak is not just a pack hunter, he is fully capable of hunting strong foes by itself and is often sent to claim the skulls of cowards, oathbreakers, and sorcerers who think they can escape Khorne's wrath. Each of his three heads serves a purpose. One sees the past, one the present, and one the future, ensuring that no prey can ever truly escape. Psykers are his favored prey, as his collar of Khorne makes him nearly immune to warp sorcery. Skarbrand. Known as the Exiled, he was once Khorne's greatest demon. He wields twin axes, slaughter, and carnage, and used to be a warrior without equal who stood at the blood god's side. But this did not last. Manipulated by Tzeentch, he turned his rage against Khorne himself, striking the blood god before realizing his mistake. Khorne was disgusted by Skarbrand, not for challenging him, but for doing so like a coward, striking him from behind. Khorne tore Skarbrand's wings to shreds and cast him out of the Brass Citadel, exiling him to wander the warp. Now, he exists in a state of mindless, uncontrollable rage, unable to think beyond the need to destroy. Despite his exile, Skarbrand still collects skulls in a desperate attempt to prove himself worthy of Khorne's forgiveness. Engrath the Unbound. The most powerful bloodthirster of Khorne, a being of pure, unrestrained slaughter. Towering over even other greater demons, he is Khorne's greatest general, unleashed only when the blood god needs total devastation. His raw strength is so immense that he has crushed titans in hand-to-hand combat, and his presence warps reality with the fury of the warp. Despite his power, he is not invincible. During the Horus Heresy, he was banished by Lorgar Aurelian, the Primarch of the Wordbearers, in a rare moment where brute strength lost to dark sorcery. But this defeat means little. Engrath is eternal, and can return over and over as long as Khorne considers him of use. Kabanda. Another infamous bloodthirster known for his rivalry with Sanguinius, the Primarch of the Blood Angels. He is a renowned warlord of Khorne, leading demonic legions into battle with brutal efficiency. His most legendary battle took place during the Siege of Terra, where he fought Sanguinius in single combat. The bloodthirster had already fought the Primarch with some success in the past, and even managed to hold its own against one of the best duelists of the Empire. But Kabanda's advantage was short-lived as Sanguinius ultimately slayed him at the gates of the Imperial Palace. Like all bloodthirsters, Kabanda wields massive weapons, favoring a huge barbed whip and a battle axe to crush his foes. He remains one of Khorne's most relentless warriors, still seeking the ultimate duel against the Blood Angel's lineage. Angron. Once the Primarch of the World Eaters, Angron has been fully transformed into a demon prince of Khorne. Now larger, stronger, and completely consumed by bloodlust, he leads his legion in eternal campaigns of destruction. As a demon Primarch, he is far superior to any other blood prince of Khorne, and has even led groups of bloodthirsters in battle. He dual wields a massive sword and an axe, called respectively Samniarius and Spinegrinder. His presence alone drives his warriors into a frenzy, turning the already savage World Eaters into unstoppable berserkers. Unlike Khorne's mortal champions who fight to earn his favor, Angron has no choice. He is bound to his rage, trapped in endless warfare with no purpose beyond killing. Furies. Furies are among the lowliest and most degenerate forms of warp-spawned life. With twisted humanoid bodies and leathery wings, they drift through the immaterium in packs like scavengers. Unlike most demons, they aren't creations of a specific chaos god. They don't embody a particular emotion or principle. Instead, they emerge from the raw, untamed energy of the warp itself. This makes them truly chaotic in nature and also deeply tormented, existing in a constant state of hunger and agitation. Furies are rarely organized. More often, they stalk battlefields to feed on corpses or follow other demons like carrion birds. But they can be forced into service. When bound by a more powerful demon or a chaos sorcerer, they can be made to fight as vanguards and scouts. And when they're subjugated by a specific chaos god, their appearance and behavior start to shift, becoming more bloodthirsty under Khorne, more sorcerous under Tzeentch, and so on. But even then, their allegiance isn't natural, it's forced. That's worth noting because Chaos Undivided is often used to describe both undivided and unaligned followers. Most demons on this list worship all four gods together as a pantheon, while others are unaligned and worship none, like the Furies we just covered. Demon Princes. These are former mortals who prove themselves through war, worship, or sheer force of will to earn the favor of the Chaos Gods. When a champion proves themselves worthy, the gods reward them with full ascension, transforming them into a Demon Prince, an immortal being of tremendous power tied to the warp. Most demon princes are aligned to a single god, like Khorne or Nurgle, and their forms and powers reflect that, but not all of them choose one patron. Some walk the path of Chaos Undivided, worshipping all four gods equally or dedicating themselves to chaos as a concept. These undivided princes are rarer, but often more cunning and independent, serving the gods as a whole rather than a single agenda. They retain some memories of who they once were, whether as space marines, psychers, or warlords, but now they command legions of demons and mortals. They often rule over their own domains in the warp, and each one is a living weapon of chaos, combining the ambition of a mortal with their new demonic power. Ruinstorm Demons. The demons of the Ruinstorm were some of the most terrifying warp entities unleashed during the Horus Heresy. When the Wordbearers and other traitor legions conducted massive warp rituals, especially the devastating one on Calth, they tore reality apart and created a permanent warp storm across the galaxy, the Ruinstorm. This breach didn't just let regular demons through, it birthed new ones. The entities that manifested were strange and unstable, taking on horrific forms that didn't match the aesthetics of the major chaos gods. Some looked like colossal behemoths, others like flesh-stitched horrors or psychic echoes of fear and despair. Their nature was raw and undefined, not bound to any specific god, but rather born from concentrated warp energy. Most of them didn't survive past the end of the heresy. As the Ruinstorm faded, so did many of these abominations. But while they lasted, they were probably the largest host of undivided demons ever created. Samus, one of the most well-known demons in the lore, especially because of his multiple appearances during the Horus Heresy. He was one of the first warp entities to manifest during the Great Crusade, possessing a sergeant of the Luna Wolves and wreaking havoc among their lines. Samus is an ancient demon prince of chaos, and he has a strong tie to the concept of murder. He is also known as the Demon of the Ruinstorm, as he used the Ruinstorm on Calth to manifest himself into real space. He doesn't fight like a traditional demon. He specializes in possession, moving from host to host, often triggered by bloodshed, fear, or warp exposure. While not the most powerful demon physically, he's incredibly hard to destroy and even harder to get rid of permanently, showing up multiple times all the way to the Siege of Terra. Madal. He is another major demon tied to the Ruinstorm, summoned during the Horus Heresy after years of dark rituals. He first manifested on the death world of Pythos, where he led chaos-worshipping Davanites into sacrificing themselves, unleashing a full-scale demonic invasion. After this, Madal took control of the corrupted ship Veritas Ferrum and became known as the Pilgrim, spreading chaos through worlds tied to the Ruinstorm. At one point, he even tried to corrupt Sanguinius and convince him to take over the heresy, believing Horus wasn't worthy. On Davin, Madal trapped the Primarch in a vision where the Emperor offered him control over the Imperium. Sanguinius rejected it, realizing it was a lie, and a fight broke out. Madal and his demons had the upper hand, but the Primarch was eventually saved by the Lion, Gilliman, and the Sanguinor. Madal would go on to appear again during the Siege of Terra, leading demonic forces in service to all the gods as a true champion of Chaos Undivided. Cherubael. Cherubael is one of the most notorious demon hosts in the Inquisition's history, a powerful warp entity bound inside a human host using forbidden rituals. What sets him apart isn't just his strength, but the long and messy connection he has with Inquisitor Gregor Eisenhorn. He was originally summoned by the Inquisitor Quixos, who used him for decades. When Eisenhorn hunted Quixos down, Cherubael was captured and eventually bound again, this time by Eisenhorn himself. And from there, the line between control and corruption started to blur. Cherubel isn't some mindless beast. He's intelligent, manipulative, and surprisingly patient. Even as a prisoner, he constantly tried to influence Eisenhorn, sometimes even helping him, sometimes pushing him closer to damnation. Over time, Eisenhorn came to rely on him more and more, and it's debatable whether he ever truly escaped Cherubel's grasp. As for Chaos Allegiance, Cherubel doesn't show any clear loyalty to a single god. He's a classic example of an independent demon, powerful, ancient, and entirely self-serving. Vashtor the Archiphane. Vashtor is one of the newest major demons in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Introduced during the Arcs of Omen storyline, he's a powerful warp entity with no clear allegiance to any one chaos god. Instead, Vashtor represents the fusion of machine and demon, and his incredible power can justify considering him a minor chaos god. He's the patron of the Dark Mechanicum, working closely with corrupted tech priests and heretics who worship his ability to shape machinery through demonic means. In the Arcs of Omen campaign, Vashtor allied with Abaddon the Despoiler, building massive war fleets to search for mysterious artifacts known as the Keys. His goal is to unlock the Librarius Demonic, a hidden weapon that could rewrite reality and truly give him a place among the Chaos Gods. Makar. Makar was once a powerful psyker and chaos champion of the Wordbearers during the Heresy. He was slain during the Underworld War but endured within the Warp, eventually ascending to become a demon prince of chaos Undivided. Makar's rivalry with the Ultramarines spanned millennia. He fought them across numerous war zones, battling with the most important names of the chapter, including Marneus Calgar himself. His deep hatred for their order and resilience became one of his defining obsessions. The Demon Prince also had a notable confrontation with the Grey Knights. When he rose to power on the planet Acrolum, he drew the attention of the Order, who launched an assault. During the battle, Makar was confronted by Kaldor Drago, the current Supreme Grand Master of the chapter. Drago defeated him in single combat, but Makar managed to curse him in his final moments, forcing Drago to spend most of his life wandering the warp. Draconian. Draconian is no ordinary demon. It's a primordial entity said to be the first human murder given form. Described as a shadow in the warp before even the Chaos Gods had names, its essence embodies the concept of death itself. The demon has long been obsessed with its goal of killing the Emperor, and eventually confronted him taking the form of that same man that committed the first murder. The Emperor defeated Draconian and forced it to take the shape of a sword, which was then bound to his most loyal custodian. Years later, Abaddon the Despoiler retrieved the sword and claimed it as his primary weapon, known as the Demon Sword Draconian. When unleashed, the sword doesn't just cut, it tears through the soul of its target, unraveling its very existence. Despite being bound, Draconian is intelligent and willful. It has tested Abaddon more than once, especially during their first meeting in the Warp. But over time, Abaddon proved strong enough to wield it without being consumed, and their bond became one of mutual purpose, to unmake the Imperium. Perturabo. Primarch of the Iron Warriors, Perturabo was a master of siegecraft and cold, calculated warfare. During the Heresy, he turned fully against the Imperium, leading brutal campaigns of attrition and fortification-breaking assaults. His loyalty to Horus was never driven by his faith in the Chaos Pantheon, but by bitterness. He felt unrecognized and undervalued, and that resentment turned to hatred. After the Heresy, he retreated into the Eye of Terror, where he eventually ascended to demonhood, becoming a demon prince of chaos Undivided. Even in his ascended form, Perturabo remains a warlord obsessed with logic, order, and destruction. He continues to command the Iron Warriors from the demon world of Medrengard, ruling from an iron fortress forged by his own hand. His forces still specialize in sieges, attrition warfare, and long-range bombardment, mirroring their Primarch's cold precision. Perturabo is the only demon Primarch that can be considered unaligned, as he worships none of the Chaos Gods. Lorgar, the Primarch of the Wordbearers and the first to fall to chaos among his brothers. He saw the Chaos Gods as more worthy of his devotion than the Emperor, and made it his life's mission to spread their worship across the galaxy. It was Lorgar who orchestrated the corruption of Horus and set the heresy in motion. But after the war, he didn't seek more bloodshed. He withdrew into the warp to pursue enlightenment, eventually ascending into his demon prince form. Lorgar has remained eerily silent since his ascension. He no longer leads campaigns or appears in real space, but his influence runs deep. Many of the galaxy's worst heresies can be traced back to the doctrines he wrote and the cults he inspired. Be'lakor, also known as the Dark Master, he was the first mortal ever elevated to demonhood by all four Chaos Gods. He is the perfect representation of Chaos Undivided, and as the original Demon Prince, he was granted immense power, but the gods grew wary of his ambition and eventually began stripping it away. Be'lakor was forced to watch as new champions rose to power, and as his jealousy grew, he started sabotaging these other servants of chaos with some good success. His power might be limited, but he's still a master manipulator. In recent times, he has been able to influence and support Abaddon in his campaigns, helping him secure key victories such as the fall of Cadia. It's likely that Be'lakor is secretly plotting against Abaddon, preparing to one day steal his role and power. But the Chaos Gods have long grown accustomed to his betrayals, and it won't be easy for the Dark Master to break free of their grip. Thanks for sticking until the end, and click here if you want to check out another video. See you in the next one.